Thanks, everybody. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Every week here at the White House, we honor ordinary Americans who are doing extraordinary things in their communities. And today I'm very excited about this event. We have a very diverse set of champions of change, from farmers that I just met from Lewisburg, North Carolina, to global corporate executive at IBM. I think the champions here today have shown tremendous leadership at their businesses and in growing their businesses to be more environmentally sustainable as well as profitable. And to get us started and to kick off the event, we have the great honor and privilege of having Valerie Jarrett, the President's Senior Advisor, to join us today for opening remarks. Thanks, Valerie.
Hello.
Thank you, Rohan. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the White House. We are so excited to have you all with us today, and I wanted to just pop in for a second, first of all, to congratulate our champions of change, who are terrific, on behalf of the President, who is delighted to have you here, who we can honor, as well as everyone else in the audience who's come in support. The President always believes, fervently he believes, that true change doesn't come from Washington. It comes from ordinary people across our great country who do extraordinary things. And so we created the Champions of Change program to give us an opportunity to recognize special people around our country who are doing just that. And we're just delighted to have 8 of those champions with us today, and specifically recognizing them for their commitment to building a more sustainable future. So if you could just join me in a round of applause for our champions. Each and every day, every person on this panel helps to meet some of the most significant challenges of the 21st century. Through their work, we demonstrate that environmental leadership contributes to the well-being of our planet, to our economic growth, and to our public health. The President is committed to working with each and every one of you. He understands the need to protect our health, our safety, and preserve our resources for future generations. That's why he's taken the unprecedented action of building the foundation for a new clean energy economy, tackling the issue of climate change, and protecting our environment. We've adopted tough new fuel efficiency standards for both cars and for trucks, and we're able to get twice as many gallons, that will end up being able to generate twice as many gallons per mile, which is an incredible feat that actually didn't require legislation. We were able to do it just by working with the auto industry. We're making a big push to improve energy efficiency in commercial buildings, as well as improve standards for home appliances. We've nearly doubled the amount of electricity we generate from renewable sources, and we've taken steps to reduce the footprint of the federal government, a pretty big footprint, I have to tell you, the largest energy consumer in the United States. So we all have a role to play in building a more sustainable future for our organizations, for our communities, for our country, and for the planet. We have a lot of hard work ahead, but we're confident that working together, we're going to really make some progress. So I want to thank you all for everything that you've done, each and every one of you, as well as those of you who come as stakeholders and supporters to improve the lives of folks all around our country. And know that as you fight for safer communities, a better environment, more secure energy future, a healthier planet, that President Obama and his entire administration stand steadfastly with you in this effort. So thank you again very much, and enjoy the day you're here. Thank you.
Before we get started with our moderated panel and question and answer portion, I just wanted to point out for all those who are watching on the live stream and those of you in here with your smartphones, feel free to follow this on Twitter using the hashtag WHChamps. And this event is being put on by the Office of Public Engagement. John Carson is the director, and you can follow him at John Carson 44. So to get this kicked off, this panel discussion kicked off, I want to introduce 2 of our colleagues here at the White House. Gary Guzzi, who is the Deputy Chair of the Council on Environmental Quality, has vast experience dealing with sustainability issues, both within the government here at the White House, previously at the EPA, and also in the private sector with dealing with businesses and environmental issues. And my friend and colleague, Greg Nelson, who is at the Office of Public Engagement and directs the entire White House private sector outreach here. So, Greg, you want to take it away?
Well, thanks, Rohan, and great to see everybody, and an honor and privilege to be up here with you guys. We thought we'd start just by giving a very brief introduction of each of the champions, since they're the folks who are here to feature, give you a little bit of their background and their story, and then jump into a discussion. So I'm going to start with Jim in the end here. So you guys know, Jim is the president of a major labor union, the IUE-CWA, and has been an outspoken advocate for greening the manufacturing process. Most recently, he has spearheaded an energy efficiency project to focus awareness on energy-saving opportunities in day-to-day operations and harness the knowledge and experience of workers to achieve those energy savings. So, Jim, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Next to Jim is Karen Cholevsky. She's the CEO and founder of Full Bloom Baking Company. She's promoted social responsibility, sustainability, positive impact, and delicious natural baking for more than 20 years. Expecting we get the chance to try some of that. Karen created Full Bloom based on the belief that a business can lead the way to better communities, harmony with the environment, and a better life for workers. Welcome, Karen. Next, we have Chairman Frank. He's the chairman of the Forest County Potawatomi Executive Council in Crandon, Wisconsin. Under the chairman's leadership, the Potawatomi have implemented several significant energy efficiency projects and increased the use of renewable energy on the reservation, considerably reducing its overall energy use and carbon footprint. Welcome, Chairman.
Thank you.
Next to the chairman is my friend Frank Hugelmeyer. Frank's the president and CEO of the Outdoor Industry Association. Together with the association members, who we have a number of representatives from the industry with us today, they've developed a sustainability working group to identify and reduce the environmental and social impacts of their products across shared global supply chains. So Frank brought along a number of his members with us today, so we just want to recognize a couple of folks who are part of the sustainability working group. Kevin Mayette from REI, Betsy Blaisdell from Timberland, Jill Dumaine from Patagonia, and Sandra Cho McDonald from Columbia Sportswear. So we give them a round of applause. Thank you guys for your leadership. Next to me, we have David Bolt. David is the founder of Sustainable Future LLC. He helps homeowners move toward net zero energy homes, which create as much energy as they use over the course of a year. His company's mission is to create a sustainable future by educating people about sustainable living. Thanks, David. Next to David, we have Wayne Balta. Wayne is the Vice President of Corporate Environmental Affairs and Product Safety at IBM. He and the team he leads at IBM oversee the company's global environmental management system, objectives, and performance. He also helps IBM colleagues who develop solutions for clients to further understand and integrate environmental sustainability into their work. Welcome, Wayne. And with a special treat, Wayne brought his daughter as a guest today. So, Juliana, are you out there? There we are. Yeah. All right. We try to bring the whole family into the champions here. Next up, we have Chad and Jody Ray, who are a husband and wife team who run a sustainable farm. They are committed to the education of all age groups about the importance of environmental stewardship and believe long-term economic growth starts with a commitment to natural resources. Chad and Jody, thanks for joining us today. So our goal for this session is to get a chance both to honor and celebrate the champions for the work that they've done, but also to turn this into a discussion. I know, learn a ton from each of these sessions on a wide range of topics. It's something that we then take and can use in the policymaking process here, so that what we're doing can better reflect the on-the-ground learning that you guys have done, and the innovations and the incredible work that's happening in these companies and also your companies out there in the audience. So we'd love to make sure that the vast majority of the time here is spent on that discussion, drawing out some of the themes, the things that you guys have learned that can help your other companies that are interested in walking on the same path, but also ensuring that it's consistent with what we're doing and that we can help support that work. So to lead us off in that conversation, I'm going to turn it over to Gary. Gary's going to kick off a discussion up here amongst the panelists, and then we want to make sure to involve all of you as well. So, Gary?
Great, thank you, and welcome everyone, and congratulations to the champions. One of the things that's so striking about this group is the breadth of the activities that you all undertake. And you know, I look across your organizations and I see organizations that are large and small and you know, that are a huge range. And I look at the things that you do, and you do things locally, you do things globally. And obviously there's something though that's common that knits this group together. And I wondered if we could spend a few minutes getting at, for you, what is the sort of the central insight or recognition that you had that made you focus on environmental sustainability, and what do you attribute your success in doing that to? And maybe since we started with introductions to my right, maybe we can start down at the end with Chad.
Yep. Well, first of all, let me say how grateful Jody and I are to be here. You're looking at a very, very small family farm and family business operation that we have sitting next to Wayne, who leads one of the largest, most important companies in the world. So it just makes you proud to be an American where something like that can happen. And we're just so happy to be here. And we're not here representing us, we're here representing the hundreds of thousands of small family farms that are out there in our country that are looking for ways to stay relevant. You either have to be better and be smarter, or be bigger. And the bigger isn't in a lot of family farms' game plan. And so sustainability was the path we chose to be better. It is who we are as individuals, and we've all had the conversation today. It doesn't matter which one of us you ask, it's a blessing for all of us to wake up in the morning and go make the world a better place in our different ways. And that's what got us to make a business out of doing what's right. But I had an older gentleman, good friend of mine, say, "Son, will you make money?" And I said, "Well, I certainly hope so." And he said, "That's good, because if you don't, you only have a hobby. And we don't want sustainability to be a hobby. We want it to be an engine of job creation from now to eternity for our generation and everyone that comes after us." And it can be.
That's great. Jody, anything you'd like to add?
I think that was well said.
Great. Thanks. Wayne, welcome.
Well,
your
I think
thoughts
it was
about
well
this.
said also.
Yeah.
And I'd like to echo, Gary, what Chad had to say. I mean, the diversity, of the group that you've assembled here is striking. And for me, it's one of the most exciting reasons to have, been honored here. The diversity is fantastic. And when we integrate the diversity of what everybody can do in their own part of the economy or society, I think that is going to be a key ingredient for societal sustainability. In the case of the organization which I'm privileged to work with, IBM, there were really two recognitions that cause us to aspire toward leadership. One, Gary, would be a recognition simply that it's the right thing to do. Now, we at IBM have been benefited by the founding family of IBM, in a way, the Watsons, who taught all of us that we as an enterprise can succeed when the constituents we serve succeed. So when the communities in which we operate do well, we have the opportunity to do well. It's the right thing to do. Secondly, we've learned over the years with conviction that good environmental management makes good business sense. And we have a variety of means by which we routinely watch that, learn that, verify that, and reap the benefits of that.
Great. Thank you. Dave, what's your thoughts on this?
I think it's really great to see so much energy being put into sustainability. I've been thinking about sustainability ever since I was a child, and watching all the food get thrown away at the lunchroom. And I asked the lunch lady, I said, "Well, I'm not going to eat that. Don't put it on my plate." And she said, "No, by law, I'm required to do that." And so I've watched all this tons of food just being put in the trash can. And so throughout my life, I've just seen tremendous amounts of waste. And I thought, if we start using those resources for something to improve people's lives, we'd just be so much better off. And what I've tried to do is to live my life sustainably and put these principles into practice, and then make those things available to other people.
That's great.
Thank you.
Frank,
Well,
you represent a wide industry association in itself.
yeah, and I appreciate it. It certainly isn't about my personal effort, but a collaboration of over 200 companies that have come together because they've realized that the challenges facing businesses in creating a sustainable future are far too great for any one company to deal with. And this, for the challenges for a large company or a medium-sized company are very different for a small company who may have the core values and the desire to affect great change, but may not have the resources or the knowledge or the ability even to focus someone specifically on that task. So what we've been able to do is come together to create a measurement tool to green outdoor products. And this has great outdoor products, apparel, footwear, equipment, and provide a roadmap for any size company to be able to measure their environmental footprint and begin to go on a journey of really affecting change. Open collaboration and transparency for us is really the key to the solution. And a lot of companies and a lot of industries struggle with this. And I think the reason that we've been successful where others have failed is that we, as an industry, have this core value around the natural environment. Clearly, our industry depends on a green future, on a healthy planet. And so we protect the natural resources, not only for the future of our industry and for our business community, but for the future generations that are going to be our customers. So there's a holistic view that our industry has that's really core to the value of who we are. And it's part of why we've been successful in collaborating together where others have not.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Good afternoon, everybody, and I would like to thank the people who recognize the Forest County Potawatomi as one of the champions of change, and I'm honored. And sometimes when chairmen like myself get to be on such lofty positions, I guess I'm not talking only on behalf of the Forest County Potawatomi. I think I'm talking on behalf of all of the tribes in the United States and Alaskan people as well. And Frank, he must have looked at my notes when he came in here because he said exactly what I was going to say. Thank you there, Frank. But I was elected to tribal office in 1996, and I served as the vice chairman for a few years, and then chairman till 2007. Took a break for 2 years and came back. And since 2009, and been here ever since then to today. But some of the things that the sustainability, I guess, and the tribe that already put into emotion long before I got there. They were fighting for recognition for, or they were trying to obtain recognition for Class 1 air simply because the federal government said that tribes could pursue the status of Class 1 air on their reservations. So we took that was our, I guess, our run at sustainability to make sure that the air quality of northern Wisconsin would remain the same, so we could, pass it on again from our generation to my grandkids, to my great-grandkids, and to their children. It's something that we feel is very near and dear to all of us. And the sustainability, and when they did introductions for Greg, and I'm looking at Greg, and they said he has a vast amount of experience in sustainability. I'm thinking this guy wasn't even born when the gas lines were in effect in the early 70s, and then I'm thinking, where in the world did this guy get all that from? But anyway, if we think back to like the 70s when the gas lines, and some of us remember those gas lines and stuff, and how we had to wait in line for gas because of the energy crisis and stuff. And I hate to say this about the federal government, but the federal government, they said, we're going to institute a incentive program. If your department can lower your energy consumption and it's measurable, you would be given an award. Well, I worked at a government institution in Flanders, South Dakota. And thank God my boss said, you know what, let's see if we can meet that challenge. So we reduced our energy consumption. And we thought by saving the energy consumption, that we would in turn lower our costs. Well, we lowered our energy consumption so much that the utility company said, you know what, we're going to have to increase your rates to offset the wood. You know, it's a catch-22 deal sometimes in you know, that tribal governments, I believe that every one of us, and you know, Frank said it best, you know, we should be concerned about sustainable energy that we have an opportunity to affect. So thank you all for listening to me, and miigwech.
Karen?
Well said. I too am extremely honored to be here, and I want to thank my team at Full Bloom, because this is definitely requires an entire team and everybody's focus to make it happen, because there's so much pressure on business to be efficient and run well that it's easy for these kinds of things to not be on the radar, especially when you're a relatively small company and you don't have entire offices just devoted to this topic. So it's a real honor to be here. Thank you. I think what had inspired this for me is because I'm very passionate about the out of doors. I was all the time growing up, I only ever wanted to be outside, and I really enjoy being out in nature. And it became apparent pretty early, even during the gas line times, that the resources were being depleted, the quality of the air was not going in the right direction, and people's health. I mean, there are just so many people with really serious diseases, more so now than there ever were before. And so that's what really inspired me to live sustainably. It's been a core value, and then it just was natural as I started a business that I wanted that to be a core part of our business as well. So thank you.
Yeah, I too like to thank the White House for this opportunity to showcase some of the things that our union and some of our members have been doing in environmental sustainability. It comes from, we're involved, the IUE, which now we're merged with Communication Workers of America, but IUE's been representing union manufacturing workers in this country since 1949. And I don't have to tell you what's happened with manufacturing, but I'm sure that manufacturing can make a comeback in the United States. And I think we're going to have to do that to be able to take care of the problems that we have, giving people who maybe don't have the education and maybe the ability to get that education, to get some white-collar jobs, give them an opportunity to raise their families and have the respect that they have a good job and able to raise their family. And so we feel that in the IUE-CWA, we are a progressive union. We feel that we can do both. We think we can take care of the environment, and we think we can posture our facilities to grow for when the manufacturing comeback happens. We've partnered with the Sierra Club. We've made the former part of the Blue-Green Alliance. Instead of, as we had years ago, the blue-green people would try to take care of the environment, and then the manufacturing companies would fight back saying what's going to cost us jobs. The IUE-CWA knows we're not going to go backwards. When I was a kid, Lake Erie caught on fire in my state. We know we're not going back to those days. We can't, for our kids and our grandkids, can't go back to those days. Today we have 7 billion people on the planet. In 1970, a couple years before I graduated, we had half that. We got more people looking for energy, and around the world there's not only double the amount of people, but double the amount of people that are consuming more energy. We know for our facilities to be able to be competitive in the future and to be able to sustain in the United States, that we have to find ways to have energy conservation and for our plants to be on the cutting edge of that. So we're looking for the ability for our facilities in the new age to be able to do both, manufacture as well as conserve energy.
Great. Thanks, Jim. We thought that we'd pick up on one thing that Jim said and ask a couple folks to address it, and that's the important role of involving employees in the process, and not just because of making sure there's buy-in, but also the incredible knowledge, innovation that comes out of that process. So, Jim, I know you've got a pretty interesting story about a treasure hunt that you guys had. If I'm right, you guys have 60,000 members at 300 manufacturing plants across the country, so it's not a small group.
No.
How did you figure out how to get those folks involved? And
This is not our first program, but we've been layering different programs. One was our lean, high-performance workforce, and we've launched that and had great success in that to help the productivity of businesses in the United States. We have an MSSC, which is the only national certification for manufacturing workers that we've worked on. Plus, part of that, we helped develop and funded the development of a green awareness module, which is the 5th module of that particular certification to get green awareness in the plant. We have partnered with, the IUE has partnered with the Environmental Defense Fund, who is looking to have environmental sustainability and to be able to use people as a resource for energy reduction. And that works for us because we know, as a union, we know the knowledge is with the people. And for years and years you heard that, well, the unions want the people to have more say in running the business, and I see now that manufacturers are finding out that is a big knowledge base that we need to capitalize on and to be able to get their input. Treasure hunts, which is part of the Energy Defense Fund's program, and at this point we're in the initial stages. We've launched this. We've had several treasure hunts. It's working extremely well, and basically how that works, we do have a professional consultant that's helping us through the early stages of this to evaluate the savings and use the programs that they have to evaluate the payback, because when it comes to businesses, obviously it's going to come to how soon would it take to pay this back, if this investment. But what we're looking at, we're not looking at programs under this at this time of huge investment dollars to go in to save over a period of 20 or 30 years, but yes, we do look at that. But we're finding so much low-hanging fruit by using our people in the hunts. And basically the way it works, it's a 3-day program. We have our techs, we have our local people that works in the plant along with the local management and engineers there, and we bring in some other workers from some other facilities that we have so they can learn this process and get a hands-on before we go to their plant. But we start out on a Sunday when the plants are idle. And we go in, they go in and they look through the plant and see ways of saving energy. And it is amazing the things that you can see and you can save. I mean, lighting, go in there on a Sunday and the office lights are on. The parking lights are all on. There's no cars in the parking lot, and they're all on. As well as sensors, putting sensors in the cafeteria when no one's in the cafeteria. The lights are all on. These are very simple things, but they add up to be a lot of money. Same way as being the compressed air leaks. Most of our manufacturing facilities use compressed air, and they have no prevention program to monitor their compressed air. Or do they have any meters to keep track of the PSIs? So heat recovery, it's another thing. We have plants that they've discovered that are taking ovens and they're throwing the heat out to the outside, and then they're bringing air in from the outside and heating it to heat the plant. Instead of having a process to where we can capture that heat that's been disposed of from an oven and capture that and use that heat source to help heat the facility or cool the facility. Same way as water circulation, the waste of water, substantial amount of waste of water, and people will go home on the weekends and leave the water on and the cycles run. So even down to the vending machines. So our group, the more they are involved in the treasure hunts, they learn more and more on how to capture those savings. They go in there on a Sunday and there's conveyor belts running continually, just sitting there, people go home. And it's a real eye-opener for not only the people that work in the plant, because quite frankly, when you walk by, maybe some of you every night probably walk by a light that you leave on in your living room. If you had a meter on that light was telling you how much it was costing you as you walk by that lamp, you might say, hey, I better turn that off before I go to bed. But you walk by it so much you almost forget it's even on. That's what goes on in our manufacturing facilities. But with the treasure hunts that we've had, we've averaged, the with one treasure hunt, we've averaged around $97,500 worth of savings, and most of it without any upfront investment, just by being smarter and doing some things. Also, the average is 779 metric tons of CO2 savings, which helps our environment. So our people are engaged. The idea is to get a continuing improvement process. When we leave or the international leaves, they continue to have these every 6 months where they do their own internal treasure hunt, get the people engaged, and so they understand the savings from that. And so we think that's a big part of conserving energy. A gentleman mentioned about you may have to raise your rates. We have some of our unionized facilities are asking us to share that with some other manufacturers in the community that are non-union. Would they help them? Because quite frankly, if your energy company does not have to build more substations, build more boilers, more powerhouses to give energy, there's a savings not only for our facilities, but there's a savings for the community. And that helps bring more investment, more manufacturing in that area because the resources are there for energy at a lower cost.
Thanks. Yeah, I want to switch over to Wayne and kind of ask a similar question. You guys are obviously a large institution. How have you got buy-in amongst the other employees of IBM, and can you turn that into a business advantage, a strategic advantage, and what does that look like in coming up with better ideas for your customers or better ideas, innovations that you guys have been able to roll out?
Sure, Greg. Great question. First off, I'm obviously extraordinarily honored to be sitting here and to personally receive this recognition. But your question makes clear that it's really the work of many people that make accomplishment possible. And so, the IBM recognition is a function of so many people who do this work. Now, IBM, as you know, is a very large global organization. $100 billion of revenue. We work in over 170 countries. Over 437,000 employees. So the question is, how do you incent and cause that scale to move in the direction of environmental sustainability? And we do that through visible commitment, direction, integration, and execution. At the end of the day, execution is essential. So what's been important for us has been to define what matters to our business and to make sure our people understand why, to define a global management system that sets clear roles and responsibilities and therefore accountability for performing work that matters, and then to measure and manage results based on the objectives we set, and then to unleash people, to empower them to go forward and do well with the inspirational direction and achievement. But it's all grounded in a global management system that assigns roles and responsibilities. Execution is critical. The benefits that we have seen at IBM are twofold. Number one, I mentioned earlier, good environmental management makes good business sense. That is so true. And we have measured this in a way since the mid-90s, and we actually publicly report on it every year in our voluntary corporate environmental reports. And so we see that from a quantitative perspective. And we've also discovered what's essential is making sure our people understand that this is a long-term imperative. You do this whether the subject is popular or not. It's easy to be green when everybody's watching, but real leadership involves what you do when nobody's watching. Okay? And it's also essential to pursue this regardless of short-term business results. So even if short-term quarterly business results and public companies have these pressures are less than desired, that cannot change the conviction of the long-term importance of this underlying subject. If we can get those two things under our belt, we've got a lot. Okay, and so those have been some of our assets.
Makes sense. I think turning from 437,000 employees to Karen, I'm wondering if you could talk about it from your perspective. You thanked your team right away. How do you ensure that everybody on the team knows that this is a core value and the education you do on the way into joining the team, and how does that play out for you guys in something a little smaller than 437,000 employees?
We're 240 people. So yes, completely different. Well, what we're seeing now is that people are coming to us with young people coming out of school. It's one of their core values, and they're really clear that young people today want their values they want to live them in their daily life, and they want to live it in their work life. And so really it's become a filter for the types of jobs that they're interested in. So it's an easy conversation with new recruits. It's, they're more questioning us. Okay, what are you doing? And, what are the metrics that you use, and how are we going to keep improving? So that aspect of it has been very easy. It's, but it's continuous. The conversation continues. The level keeps getting increased. It's continuous improvement for sure. So we achieve one mark, and it's on to the next one, and it's exciting. It's a great time.
Thanks. Let me shift from the employee side to the customers and your organization's interaction with customers, and really sort of interested in how much that drives you to be responsive to this set of issues, or what are the opportunities that you're finding for helping to inform customers about the way in which sustainability can be an important practice. And let's start with I love this quote from Jody and Chad's blog about having a family tree that has roots deeper than a 200-foot pine. But I wanted to start with that sense of the effect in local communities and what you're seeing. Maybe Jody or Chad, if you'd be good enough to start.
Sure. And from thousands of employees to 200 employees to 2. Me and him. But at the same time...
you have 100% buy-in in your employees.
Exactly. We only have the 2, but we have my mother and father, and we have Chad's mom and dad, and we have about 480 families that participate every week in getting a newsletter, per se, put out on the internet by us. They come and they support our farm. They buy our food because they want something better for their families. But beyond that, when we say, hurricane blew down a tree, can you come help cut trees? We have volunteers come to work and to help. Because people want to get out. They want to be connected to their communities. They want to do something outside. It's important for them. And I think, too, they want to know where their food is coming from. And it's not always somebody else's job to grow your food. And I know everybody can't have 24 chickens, but I think everybody could have a tomato plant in a pot. And at least you could appreciate that when you bought your tomato in the grocery store today and paid $1 for it, that in February or March, somebody planted a seed. They waited 10 to 14 days for it to come up. They nurtured it exclusively for about 4 to 5 weeks. They planted it in a field. They fertilized it, composted it, grew it, watered it, then harvested it, then delivered it to that grocery store for you to pay $1 for it. And you would at least appreciate how much time and how much work is involved in what we're eating.
And I can give you a good example of why this works. And it wouldn't be from our place. It could be right here from this building. We just had lunch a block away at one of the most successful restaurants in the city. It's been there since 1846, I think. But anyway, we opened the menu, and right there stamped in green, the only thing green in the whole menu was local grass-fed hamburger. So obviously that's what I ordered. And I asked the lady, the server to tell me what farm it came from, and she knew.
That's great.
And so I pulled it up on their smartphone, and it turns out that it's a co-op. And there's 3 farms in Virginia and 3 farms in Maryland. So by us buying that burger today, we help those 6 families keep their family farm. Now tell me, in what community in the United States of America does that not work? It works in every one. We come from a place with 750 people. And in North Carolina, just imagine the metric if we did it on a national scale, but it's a proven fact. In North Carolina, if every person spent 10% of their food from farms raised and grown, animals and vegetables grown in North Carolina, it would employ 250,000 people like Jody and I. So imagine what our country could be if we just committed to our local environment and our local economy just 10% of our spending power.
That's what a fascinating story. Thank you. Frank, let me ask you on sort of a different end of the spectrum. Some of your companies source their products globally, in fact, and you're still responding to customers in your initiative on outdoor apparel with some really sophisticated tools for understanding those global impacts. How much are these actions responding to customers? What sort of tools are you using to be able to help them really be informed consumers?
Well, the initiative started with a desire to try to express where a company was in the continuum and where a product might be, how green is a product. And I actually have to give my friend Betsy here a lot of credit because Timberland came out with one of these tools for a consumer really to measure the impact and see the benchmarking of a product. But we realized that there was so much more that needed to be done, and no one company could create this. And so this collaborative started very small and organically in our community, but it's gone global now, as you said, because we're talking about a global supply chain, and the consumer businesses, all businesses really have to have a global scope in this market. We have struggled with this question because the consumer expects that companies have done the right thing and they've got it right. And to be honest, there's a lot of work to be done, and a lot more work to be done. And that's why our tool is focused on a business-to-business platform first, because we realized that we had to actually get our arms around this incredibly complex matrix. When you think about a product, any outdoor product, there's a supplier to a supplier to a supplier. You don't even control those businesses. So you may buy from a supplier. You have to go so far down the supply chain to understand every aspect of your chemistry, of your sourcing, of how they treat people in those. It's brutally difficult, and particularly for a small company, it's nearly impossible. And so this really was the challenge in front of us, and it's at a global scale. And so it's only through the open collaboration and the ability to actually pull everyone's data together that we could start to put our arms around it. I see in the future, I know a lot of people, a lot of executives, a lot of employees in the industry would like to be able to communicate this right away. We're honestly not there yet, but we're getting closer. And our ability to attract or to get companies like Walmart and Target and Nike and 30% of the apparel market of the world to now take the tool that were created by these great companies and to combine it with some other tools that are out there that Nike has developed. This new initiative is going to have great impact, and it's going to put us in a position where we can start to have a very good, honest conversation with the American public, with all consumers. And the best brands in the world right now in this area are having exactly that. They're being honest as to where they are, and they're being honest internally with all of their employees of the hard work that has to be done.
That's great. Thank you, Frank. I wanted to ask the chairman a question. Chairman Frank, having been in leadership for 16 years, but also with the great stories you guys have developed, I wanted to ask two parts around that. One is if you could talk a bit about the kind of economic impact and the job creation impact. That I know that's one of your responsibilities, and how this drive towards sustainability and energy efficiency connects with that. And then second is what kind of reception you've gotten from other tribal chairmen around the country, and how you guys might be working together to collectively tackle, share some of your stories with others that can help move the entire community on that path.
Thank you. One of the things on the sustainability, and I'm looking at the lights up here, and I'm looking, these are LED lights, and the camera power from these things are awesome. And one of the things that the Forest County Potawatomi, when we built our, needless to say, a casino in the city of Milwaukee, we have a parking structure. And we use regular lights that were on the market that you could go down to any Ace Hardware store and buy. Well, after a while, we was looking at our utility bill, and it was eating us, our house and home. So we did a retro, and we put in these kind of lighting, and our consumption went down. And now, when you were talking about customers,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to think, do we have any customers? And I think everybody that uses our facilities is our customer. Having a casino. Now, those slot machines generate a lot of heat. So when you talk about collaboration with other governments, other tribal governments that have casino operations, well, they begin to insist that the manufacturers of slot machines become energy efficient, that they run cooler, they run smarter, and they run faster. They got that. So, you know, it's talking about sustainability. Now,
Tell them to run looser.
that's a trade secret. But, and some of the stuff that we shared, now, wind power and this kind of sustainable energy, and simply have a farmer down there that's, you know, being recognized. And I thought he was going to, this was his reason for being here, but, you know, in sharing information. Now, in the state of Wisconsin, you know, and the tribe, we're looking at biomass and biodigesters and some of the byproducts that come from that. Well, I didn't understand it, but, you know, some of us are visual learners, so we happen to have a farm that's about maybe 50 miles from my doorstep in Green Valley, Wisconsin. They have a dairy farm there that has about 3,500 head of cattle. And they have these long barns. And if you walk on their facility, you would swear there's only about 8 cows there because there's no smell. They take all of the manure and they take it and they can mix it and they put it into these big 1 million gallon holding tanks which produces methane gas, which in turn Caterpillar makes an engine that burns methane gas, which in turn turns a generator which produces electricity. I said, this is what biodigester is all about. So when we get together with other tribal governments, we kind of share this information with each other. Do you have the land base in which this would be a market for you? Or do you have the resources for you to develop wind energy? What can we do that maybe we could partner up to help you to be able to invest in wind energy? And I'm going to brag on the state of Wisconsin, but I think they have the best utility laws in the United States of America, because if you produce green energy, they have to buy it. So it makes it accessible to us, for us to do that. So when you talk about tribal governments and sharing and stuff, these are some of the things that we share with other tribal governments.
That's great. Dave, let me ask you, if I understand Sustainable Futures, you've really focused on sharing that kind of information as it affects homeowners and their energy use, and what are the kinds of smart solutions and cost-effective solutions that homeowners really can deploy. I think you've had some personal experience actually staying off the grid in some way and not paying electricity bills, and really pioneering some of those solutions. What have you found that's worked? What kind of education have you done with communities around these issues?
One of the key things when you're trying to reduce energy is to have some sort of feedback loop. And when I started converting my house to net zero energy, I put a meter in there, turned every single thing in the house off, and realized that I'd just spent $30,000 for a renewable energy system and it wouldn't power my house in the off condition. And so I was going to spend another $60,000, or I could go through and start figuring out, you know, why is everything off and still using energy. And so there's a tremendous amount of going through the house and circuit by circuit figuring out what was using energy. And so that house used, when it was not being used, was about 600 kilowatt hours a month. 2 years later, I was able to have 4 people in there living full time using 300 kilowatt hours a month. So that gives you some sense of the tremendous amount of waste that's happening in houses all over. So if you can take energy efficiency measures and combine that with renewable energies, then you can get a zero bill. And by the way, I am actually tied to the grid. So I get during the summertime, I'm building up credits and putting more energy into the grid than I'm using, and then in the wintertime, I'm using some of those credits. And I got a bill or got a check from the utility company a couple of years ago for $300, which is nice to get them for the money to come the other way.
It's great. We thought we'd shift to one other direction as well, and that's just in looking back a little bit on each of you have been on a pretty impressive journey and learned a lot along the way. I'm wondering if you have one piece of advice or sort of pearl of wisdom to somebody who's a little bit further back in the journey and getting started in either their own company or in their own home, their own life. What is the one piece of advice you give them, like on a specific, tangible, either direction not to go down or perspective to have as they're getting started and understanding how they're going to incorporate sustainability into their business or into their life? And maybe for this one, we could start back with Jim on the end here, and we'll just work down.
First thing you need is a good union. I may suggest the IUE CWA. Once you get that, is listening to your people, getting the people engaged, and having them be aware. As I mentioned earlier before, I didn't say, the first day of our workshop, of our treasure hunt is when the place is closed. Then the next 2 days is while it's running. Working around the plant floor with people so they recognize and they understand. So I would say get engaged early. We have had some pushback. Sometimes you go into a facility and sometimes the engineers kind of feel threatened, that somehow this is going to make them look bad because, they haven't figured this stuff out and some guy or gal on the lines figured something out that they should have thought of. It all comes down to leadership. So I guess the one thing would be is the top leadership, whether it be in the union or whether it be in the company or corporation, they need to get involved to push to make these things happen. And once the top leadership says this is where we're going, suddenly they get religion and they get on board.
Jim, let me just interject a note of thanks here. The Blue-Green Alliance has really been a remarkable partner in some of the work the administration's done, some of our work on building efficiency, on motor vehicle fuel efficiency. You've really been an essential partner in getting that
Thank you very
done.
much.
We really
Yes.
appreciate it.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. No, definitely engage the team. Well, first you have to make a leadership decision and then engage the team. You have to measure, because what gets measured gets done, whether that's personally, if you're tracking, how many miles you're running or how many times you're going to yoga class. It's the same in business. If as business leaders and your team leaders, if you're putting focus and importance on it, you're going to measure it and you're going to track that, and then reward based on that. So if it is a value, if it's something that is important to you, you have to align your reward system with that as well. Because otherwise, it's not authentic and it's not going to be ingrained in the whole business like you want it to be. And just know that whatever actions that you take, you are going to change the world.
In 10 words or less. Hire people who share your core values. So that would be my words of wisdom.
Great one.
For me, this is how do you eat an elephant, and that's one bite at a time. And so to CEOs, I would say make the commitment. The business case is proven, it's real. This is about innovation and efficiency, and if you're not on this journey, you're late. To staff who have this within their companies and are trying to influence up and out, I would say benchmark. You're not alone. There are enormous resources out there and best practices that you can quickly adopt. And I would say refrain from championing successes before you really identified or even achieved solutions. You have to start by that internal process and drive internally first. And then I agree, you measure and make sure that you're making measurable success before you start to communicate.
I think the most important thing for leadership in a company to bring sustainability is to be authentic and actually practice what you're preaching in your personal life, as well as in the company. One of the things I did early on is I discontinued my garbage service. And when you're dealing with your own garbage, you become incredibly aware of what goes into your garbage because you're putting it in your car to haul it off. And that's a good feedback loop to help you become aware. And so again, the more that stuff you can do, the better you're going to be.
Wayne?
Thank you. So I'll offer just quickly two thoughts, one for the present, one for the future. For the present, the advice I'd have would be to integrate the ethic throughout the fabric of your team. And that applies whether it's 2 people, whether it's 200, 2,000, or 200,000. Because if you can integrate the environmental ethic throughout the fabric of your unit, then it will not be dependent solely on one person or one leader who will serve in that role for only a finite period of time. That will help make it sustainable. Okay, I'd say that for the present. Looking toward the future, I'd say that I would look toward innovation. Okay? I personally think that our environmental movement is going to spread from control to prevention toward innovation. And if I can say, at IBM, we speak about this at length through the dialogue we started called A Smarter Planet. And we've said that the world is a system of systems. We've said the way the world works is not smart enough to be sustainable. And there are a variety of ways we can innovate using tools we currently have in the toolbox to make what we collectively do through different industry sectors and different governments day to day a lot more efficient and effective. So today, integrate, tomorrow, innovate.
Love it. Jody and Chad?
This will probably be twofold. I was going to say just that everybody can do something. It can be small pieces, and if everybody did just a little bit, and it could be businesses or households, if everybody just did a little something, open your eyes, look around, and start small.
And I'd like to say three ideas, but very quickly. One, I couldn't agree with David more. There's way more followers in this world than there are leaders. It's okay for followers to change as they see what the leader is doing. But if you're a leader, you must be transparent and you've got to be authentic. If you try to pull sustainability off and it's not for real in your soul, you're not going to pull it off. So if you're going to lead in sustainability, have it in your soul. Second, align with larger organizations. We have a construction business too. And so like David, we build homes that are 50 to 60% more energy efficient. We align with other green and energy builders across our region. For our farm, we align with a national organization called Animal Welfare Approved. We want to be linked with other farmers who consider the planet's welfare and animal welfare, and we want to be under that umbrella because we know we'll never be big enough to stand out on our own. So we wave the UWA flag, and we wave a lot of local program flags at home. And third, don't get disappointed when you feel like you're running uphill. And I'll get to the summary very quickly here. Until green energy is as cheap as dirty energy and mountaintop coal removal, most people won't do it. As disheartening as that is, it's a reality. So we've got to focus on how to make doing what's right more profitable than doing what's wrong. Quickly.
Thank you. I think we have time now to open it up for some questions and discussion from the audience. So we'd love to hear from you, both your own stories, but also questions you guys have for the champions and other ideas for where this discussion could go. So we've got microphones over here, and raise your hand, and we'll bring the mic over. Make sure we can get perfect. We've got a question here. Since we're live streaming it, we want to make sure everybody can hear you across the world.
Thank you. I'm Dan Rupley. I'm a lawyer, and I'm trade delegate to China from Maryland. It's astonishing what the Chinese are doing in terms of alternative energies right now. Every time I go there, I think I'm going to a new country. I look to our south, to Costa Rica, which has set a timetable of 2020 to be completely erasing their energy, their carbon footprint. And they're going to do it. They're not going to be burning anything to make electricity. It's all going to be hydroelectric, It's all going to be wind and solar. The gentleman who's from North Carolina, you're doing some really important stuff. But what we have to do is create a new ethic and a new way of looking at this whole thing. The fact is, one of the cheapest things in the world to capture and turn into energy is wind. In 1917, Alexander Graham Bell gave a blueprint for energy alternatives to petroleum. And he pointed out that that great wind corridor that we have between northern Texas and the Dakotas is the richest wind corridor in the world and could probably power this country and Canada if we would just capture it, if we just had the vision to do it. I'm old enough to remember when John Kennedy told us we were going to the moon, and I believed him, and we did it. And I think we need to set some goals and timetables. I applaud all of you for what you're doing. And Chairman, you're the guy from the culture group that has a reverence for nature and for creation, and I especially applaud you. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? I've got one right back here. Thank you.
Hi, Carrie Braxton, Global Business Solutions, Inc. We're part of the Small Business Majority. Wanted to know, as you said, I think particularly the people from North Carolina, besides your beautiful beaches, you're doing great things with farming, and that's wonderful. I think the idea of 10% for everyone into localized farms would be wonderful to see. But my real question concerns the fact that it is more expensive to be green. I forget the Sesame Street character who always talked about it's not easy being green from my childhood. But anyway, the key is when I had to buy a ream of paper, I particularly try to buy green from our company, it was almost $1 more for the ream. How do we tell our trade association, for example, why it's important to spend that extra $1? Has anyone broken it down into monetary terms for the future? Thank you.
I certainly couldn't answer any products other than ours, but I'll give you a real live example that happens 100%, not 99, 100% of the time to people we sell to. Obviously, people can go buy food cheaper at the grocery store than they can buy from us, and we don't try to compete that way. But then others say, well, you cater to the wealthy, and I tell them all the time, Jody and I have lots of single mamas on one income that support 2 to 3 kids. Now, are they buying ribeyes and fillets? No, ma'am. But they're buying chicken stock and eggs and sausage and things. And so, but that lady and our families make a choice to spend their money on the best healthy product that they can feed their family as an investment. And then second, I'd like to say, for the people who do buy our more expensive products, every time they come back to us and say, you know, the second time we cooked pork chops, we only cooked 1 because the first time we were so full from eating just half one and we were so content, we eat half of what we used to eat. And they say, why is that? Well, the reason is because hopefully the meat that you got from us is full of nutrition and so much better for you because of the diets that our animals eat and the welfare that we give them. The animals return that goodness back to us as humans where we need to consume less. And I think that parable carries over to any of us. Yes, ma'am, the front end cost may be higher, but the lifetime cost is way significantly lower. And we got to change how we think about cost from being only the front end all the way to the back end for our entire life.
Great. Yeah. David and then Chairman Frank.
Yeah, I'd like to, I guess, challenge the whole idea that it's more expensive because you're not taking into cost health cost. I mean, or taking into cost, cleaning up air pollution, et cetera, et cetera. So once you take into all those costs, it is cheaper to be green than it is not to be. I was given a statistic one time about the cost of doing a building, and I think like 40% of the cost was after you built it, maintenance and stuff. And so again, you start saving that money, it is cheaper in the long run.
Chairman?
Talk about being cheaper would cost more. And I'm going to talk about a little bit on the energy usage, electricity. Now, a gentleman over here, that's the lawyer, and talked about wind energy. One of the things, and I'm going to brag on us in the Forest County Potawatomi. I believe that I can honestly say that we are probably the only tribe in the United States of America that's 100% green. And we went to great lengths to find where we could buy electricity that was sustainable, and we bought wind energy out of Texas. And talk about doing an energy audit on ourselves. We reduced our carbon footprint, and I believe it's going to be at like about 120 tons of carbon that we ended up we're saving, and that we're not putting up into the air. So these kind of things, you know, it doesn't cost us anymore. As a matter of fact, our energy usage and consumption and our bills went down because we are green. So on the energy side, thank you.
Anybody else want to address it?
Yeah, I want to also challenge the idea that it's more expensive being green. Now, there are cases where that's true, but much of the products that are out there, a lot of companies are pushing off the costs of having a green, virtuous infrastructure and making sure that there are no pollutants in their supply chain, there are no toxins, you can go on and on and on. And if you take ownership of that and create a holistic, it's then a level playing field, and then you would see the real cost. But a lot of companies right now are pushing that outside of their own personal responsibility, out of sight, out of mind, and it's not a real picture, and therefore you're not comparing apples to apples.
Other questions? We've got one in the front row here. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Nyla Goburn, and I'm the business manager for Breasia Studios, which is an audio, lighting, and video production company. We're also part of the Small Business Majority. And I want to ask, not all of you, but if some of you could give us some suggestions for our company to be more green. We use LED lighting, we recycle paper, glass, and plastic in our studio. But what other ways could we take another step forward so that we can be more environmentally sustainable? Thank you.
Sure. David, we might turn it over to you as the as the building expert, but also think about Karen on some of the systems you guys are using and installing, and even how to analyze and think about what as an individual business, think about what your systems look like and how you could do that.
Again, just it goes back to when, as a personally, I stopped the garbage collection. We do the same thing in the business. You look at every single thing that's coming in and where does it come from? What I'm doing that. So in our business, we use a lot of wire. So we have a wire stripper to strip the wire and recycle it. All of the kitchen waste, we compost it and put it in worm bins. I always like to watch the people when they do tours see the worm bin. It's like get a lot of interesting looks. But the main thing is just make things visible and think about it. Where's this coming from? Where's it going? And if you go through that exercise, you'll find ways.
Karen?
Two thoughts come to mind. One is hire an intern. There's a lot of graduates right now or students still in school looking for some summer work, and that's the kind of project they really enjoy tackling. So they'll come in and just do an audit and give it the outsider's eye, because I think when we're doing it day to day, it's more challenging to see it, and somebody with a different perspective and some new tools from school can probably shed some light on some possibilities. And then also LEED, they are now offering a program for existing businesses to it's a third-party audit and certification about your practices. So there's a whole set of points on there that you can self-score on there, and they can give you some good ideas.
Yeah. I will say too, the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, has an Energy Star program for not just products, which has been around for decades and is doing some amazing work, but they're also doing it for institutions now. So there's Energy Star for congregations and synagogues, Energy Star for small businesses. And on the website, if you go and just go to the EPA website and type in Energy Star for business, it gives you a whole list of checklist of elements you can take a look at and see how it applies to your own structure. Every business is going to be different, but I think you're right. If you look at it with that eye and that checklist, you can get a good start on it. and then you'll be a model for everybody else in your industry. I love it.
Good for you.
Other questions?
Yes, good afternoon. Sandra Pone, Kennedy Development. I haven't heard anyone really speak to one of our greatest resources for going green in this country, which would be educating the children from the beginning. Because the children that we are in the schools now are an entirely different breed of children than my generation or some of the generations that have come beyond me. They're at a point where you can really make this a part of their lifestyle. So if you start with the small children, educating them in this way, it would deal with a lot of the other problems that we had. When you're saying that you're eating less because the food is more nutritious, that means that that's going to tackle the problem of obesity, childhood obesity in this country, which also affects various other diseases. So there's so many things that are intertwined. And if we could get someone to have the commitment, I know it's very difficult to go into the school systems and try to get the school systems, which are on strict budgets, to put nutritious food into the school systems of the quality that we're talking about, because it may be a little more expensive. But if someone would commit to that type of program, nutrition in the schools, and also an awareness in the schools, in the cities and suburban areas, there are parks that the children can adopt and learn how to grow gardens or plant flowers or whatever in those parks that are near their schools. And they buy in and they have a commitment to their neighborhoods. So there are a lot of other things that can be impacted by going green. Now my company, at this point, I have a landscaping company, and we do tree pruning and tree removal, etc. But I spent 35 years teaching in elementary school, and I know that if you can get the children, train up the children in the way you want them to go, and they will, because they're open to it. It's something that we're going to have to convince ourselves of and those people in charge of, but they're open to it because they're learning it, and it's just going to be a part of their nature, just like the computer.
Yep, that's a great flag. Anybody want to tackle that first? And Wayne, I know you guys are, remember IBM celebrated its 100th anniversary last year, and I remember as part of that you guys have done some interesting work in schools in New York City in particular on science, math education, but I know that a piece of that is sustainability.
STEM education is very important to IBM, and yes, IBM did celebrate its centennial in 2011, and as part of that, we had, for all of our global employee base, a day of celebration of service on IBM's actual centennial. And I personally, during that day, went into my daughter's school system and spoke about Watson, the IBM computer that competed on Jeopardy, and spoke about what it can do besides play Jeopardy, which is monumental and potentially life-changing. I agree so wholeheartedly with the premise of your question. And there used to be a time when in my career I would be asked, do you think the next generation is going to be more environmentally aware or active than yours is? And I used to think about it and say, I think so. I'm pretty sure, but I really wasn't. But to tell you the truth, now today, I am absolutely convinced, because I do try to take as much time as I can to go to primary, secondary schools and colleges. And you're quite right. I mean, when children are taken outdoors, when they're taught about nature, when they learn where things come from and where they go, I absolutely positively see a very different level of caring. And I am extraordinarily optimistic that the next generations will do a heck of a lot better than we've done.
Chad and Jody?
First of all, ma'am, I'd just like to apologize for not addressing that. You're right. It's a very important part of what we do. We have either a child or children at our farm nearly every day, at least 6 days a week. Sometimes we have school groups as large as 150. And then my only other comment I'd like to say, you said a couple of times that someone needs to address this, and I'd just like to change that one word to everyone. Every single person here in this room is responsible for teaching our children a better way and learning from our own mistakes, certainly us included. And we owe that debt to our country and our society to do that. So I'd just like to say every one of us up here should and will do that. And I ask every one of you to try to do that in some way as well.
Thank you.
Actually, one of the product lines that we have at Full Bloom is a line of products, healthy products for schools. And you're right, there are a lot of challenges getting those products in when you're not a large company, when you're competing against the Happy Meal. And seriously, that's what we're up against. And the products that the schools currently have are packaged in really cool packaging, and it's not sustainable. But that's what draws kids at first. And so it's, you know, where's that education piece? How are we going to partner together to help students and teachers and school systems understand that this is a better choice, and even though it's not wrapped in multicolor wrapping and has a free toy inside and it is nutritionally better because it's made from real food, from real ingredients, simple things, and we want to get it there, so you can help spread that word.
As I mentioned, this event's been being live streamed, and we're also taking questions on Twitter. So Amanda has a question from Twitter. She's going to go ahead and read us.
This is a question for Chad and for Jody. It says, Chad and Jody, was there one moment when you decided that you needed to create a sustainable family farm?
I think Chad inherited a farm when he met me and married me. I am the one that drags home all the critters and the creatures and digging in the dirt, but he's the one that made it a business. And so now it is a business that we can share with other people. I'll let him talk about that.
Yeah, I used to tell people we worked really hard to support our farming habits, and we just lived that way, and it was a blessing to live that way. And I mentioned briefly we had a construction business, and we all know the current state of the construction industry, and so we either had to change our lifestyle, or we had to get creative really fast and say, if I want to do this, then how can it stand on its own 2 feet? And so that's why we turned our personal interest into a business venture. And I'm definitely not smart enough to see that this was going to happen. But what we found in less than 2 years was our farming venture to show people, we don't sell products. We sell our story of who we are and what's important to us and our vision for a better world. That's what we sell. And by doing that, people know that it's real, and they want to be a part of that. And every single person that has that in them, whether it's sustainability or baseball or chemistry, it doesn't matter. We all have different things that make us go. But if everybody finds inside them what makes them go, people want to gravitate to you to see where you'll take them. And we embrace that, and we're ready to go, and we're going. It may be small, but we're going.
Great, thank you. I have a question here.
I don't have a question, but I have a story to tell.
Right.
Now, I'm the inventor of the 4 and 5 compartment recycling container, which you label each container is labeled for recycling. And since 1990, I've been looking for funds to build a recycling plant, a recycling more or less an injection molding plant to make this line of recycling containers. Actually, I solicited a lot of municipalities. Everybody was interested, but I couldn't produce. See, so I'm here to pitch this product to you. Now, if you go online, you'll see under Razak Dosunmu, my recycling container, And I started looking for money in all sorts of ways, and I decided to go after the currency itself. So now what happened, the judicial system gave an ultimatum for the Mint to find a way for everybody to be able to use the US currency. Because if you take your currency, if you close your eyes, you can't tell the difference. Okay, so I put some documents together. I got intellectual property rights by copyright on Braille on currency. So the department issued a solicitation out for information on how they will go about implementing the mandate that the Supreme Court gave to the Mint. So everybody came up with their idea. Then I have my copyright, submitted it, and I asked for $5 million to use in building my plant, and a penny on production of the currency. And somebody called me from the Mint and said, well, you need to go to the Small Business Administration. So I said, well, look, my idea is this will alleviate the problem of people not being able to see. I mean, a lot of people, if you don't wear your glasses, you can't see your currency. You can't, you can give wrong amounts. The Mint also tried, they expanded the figures on the currency. Mm-hmm. And it's not enough. For somebody that is blind, you can't use your currency. So I implemented this Braille on currency copyright, and I wanted to gain a sort of royalty on it, because one, for economic-wise, the United States will own this copyright in the future, although I have the copyright now. And that gives you the right to go sell it to other countries to use on Braille on currency, and eventually, it'll be a beneficiary to the economy.
Sir, hate to cut you off. Is there a website you mentioned was online that we could share with folks, and then we're going to get a chance to take one more question before we have to move on to our final speaker. So
yeah, it's just my pattern on the recycling being, that's my main issue.
You should go to Shark Tank.
Shark Tank.
Good idea.
Yeah, well, that could be a way, but I just want one more last thing I just want to share with you, because you have a lot of people overseas that are stashing the United States currency, and when you do implement a project like this, everybody has to come in and change whatever they have stashed away. You see? So it's a very economic wise move. It's a monetary policy that will help the blind people and will help us bring all the American dollar that is overseas back to recycle. And it'll be a win-win situation. And I'll be able to get my investment to build my plant. Gotcha. So I need everybody's support.
Thank you for sharing it. Thank you. We've got one question in the back, and then if we have time, we've got one more in the front as well.
Thank you. David Mitchell from Global Language Translation. We've done all these things in our office, I think, of recycling, and I'd like to recognize our president up here. Jenny, if you'd wave your hand. She's been the force behind recycling plastics, and so on. I have one thought to leave with you and then a question. The thought to leave with you is the one thing that we can't get rid of are all the federally mandated and state mandated posters and signs and government forms that we have to keep, the W-4s, the I-9s, the right to work, the signs, safe workplace, and all that. Anything you can do in the federal government to cut back on that, we would appreciate. Now, my question for you is, all of our employees must go to our company website each day and record their time. That's the perfect place for us to put a company message for the employees. What suggestions do you have of where we can go and get these messages that are credible, that we can put up on our website that have an impact? Any ideas of where we can go and do that? Thank you.
Good question. Your favorite resources for your sustainability information or kind of daily tips? Sam? Yeah. I'll tell you the one I use, which is, again, we use the Environmental Protection Agency quite a bit. I would also say that Gary and Rohan are both with the White House Council on Environmental Quality, which has a terrific blog on their website that updates on what the administration is doing on environment and sustainability. In particular, a whole bunch of stories such as the folks that are up here today, but additional stories as members of the administration travel around and we look to highlight stories on sustainability. We try to do as much of our work as we can through storytelling to make sure that we're lifting up the work that you folks are doing in communities. It's a great way to highlight what's already happening. So that stuff is all open and usable, and you should feel free to repost that information as often and as frequently as possible. And I think if there's not a new blog post up every day, Rohan probably gets in trouble. So we got to make sure that's the case. Of course. One last question. We've got one right here in the front. Happens to me all the time.
So Jamal Lee, Brazier Studios. We do audio lighting and video production. I know you mentioned these lights, and they're good lights, and we use them as well. But as you know, they're very expensive. Mm-hmm. So my question is, so what do we do to make green a little more affordable? And in addition to that, what can we do to make it more attractive to the younger generation? And I noticed that he asked, where do we go? And many people didn't know right here on this panel. So what do we do to create awareness to this very important issue?
Great question.
Real quickly, I'd just like to say everybody is going to have some things you can do and some things you can't. For the things that, and when you look at a LED, and I don't know what that costs, but let's just say it costs $500 or $2,000 per light. So I'm looking at like $10,000 worth, $15,000 worth of light, 16. But anyhow, in our budget, no sir, we couldn't do it. So what can we do? We can turn the lights off. We maybe can go to CFLs where the technology is lower, and I know that wouldn't be as good. Or maybe we just have one light for one particular, in your production on a smaller scale. But I would venture to say everybody in this room is going to shoot for the moon and strive for all they can do. And don't feel bad about not being able to do the best. Just do the best you can do. And I know that's very blah, but it's so true. I mean, there's nothing wrong with trying to do, wanting to do more than you are capable of.
That's a great answer. Chairman?
To answer your question a little bit, and I didn't realize this year, but right in our backyard in the state of Wisconsin, Manitowoc, Wisconsin, there's a lighting company there. And when Jim was talking about going by and turning off lights, well, he has this kind of unique system, motion detectors and all stuff. But he has a light that brings in sunlight right into his building and his warehouse. So his lighting in his building is absolutely free.
Yes.
But it's the way the building is constructed.
Yes.
Is how he can use that. And they give off just about as much candle power as these guys right here. Yep. And I was amazed when I saw that. Holy simoleons. It's right in our backyard here.
Yeah. And on an existing building, you could use a solar tube type product to bring in sunlight without having to build a new building.
Yeah.
So important, young people in the awareness aspect.
Okay. David?
I think we're doing a pretty darn good job. I mean, in 2005, when I started the company, people wouldn't even talk to me, and now the phone's ringing off the hook. So I don't know. I mean, just every day you pick up a newspaper, there's another story about being green. So I think we're doing a pretty good job. More seminars and stuff.
Frank?
Yeah, I would agree. I think when you look at young people coming into the workforce, into our companies, they already have this in their DNA. It is so exciting. It's so inspiring. And if you think about the original recycling programs in the United States, they did start in the schools, and it was the young people that actually influenced the parents to change. And I think that that's what we're going to see. I think it's going to take time, but what we're seeing in the outdoor industry, and for the folks who come in, and want to really they want to work, but they want to feel great about what they're doing as a career. And so I'm very bullish in terms of our future in this area. I think that we're going to watch the young people lead in this and putting them in a position. Young people right now don't want to be told what to do. They don't want to be leaders of tomorrow. They want to be the leaders of today. And finding every way to put them in that position, you're going to see this move a lot faster, a lot quicker.
Well, thank you all for your thoughts and ideas. One thing that is so striking about this panel is, as I said at the start, there are in some ways so many differences among the panelists, yet what we heard this afternoon was those things which bind this panel together. And it really was, to pick up on something that Chad and Jody said, for each of the panelists, for each of the champions, it's the authenticity of their work. And it's also, I think, a sense that none of this is in fact easy, that this group has worked really hard and has demonstrated enormous commitment and enormous resilience and enormous resourcefulness in finding solutions that really are helping to chart the future of this country. And one of the, I think, striking things was that regardless of the nature of the organization, what we heard today was that each had worked hard to find an alignment with a business approach that would really work. And an alignment on the family farm, an alignment for one of the largest global information and technology solution providers, an alignment for a small business that's really highlighting how efficiency means savings, means reducing waste, and that is also focused on innovation, an alignment for a group of competitors who have come together to provide information that's incredibly meaningful to their consumers, an alignment for a tribe that's looking for economic development and is finding some very cost-effective and energy-efficient solutions and opportunities for tribal members, an alignment for a small business that's creating opportunities for its employees, and in every single case, I think, a sense that employees are providing many of these solutions, that they're both motivated by the opportunities that exist and that they're creating the future, that they're creating the opportunities that exist. So I think one of the things that's so heartening for us at the White House is the opportunity really to hear these stories, and to the last few questions to be able to share some of the ideas which are coming forward, because these are great ideas. We in the administration don't have a corner on those great ideas. We can find them and work our best to promote them and help to deploy them across the country. But ultimately, it is really being able to reach out and find some of these ideas that's so important. And again, congratulations to all of the champions.
Thanks very much to Gary and Greg for moderating, and for all of our champions for their advice and insight. We have the privilege of being able to hear from the chief economist at the Department of Commerce, Mark Doms. Dr. Doms previously, prior to this appointment, was senior economist at the Federal Reserve Bank in San Francisco, also worked at the Research and Statistic Division of the Board of Governors, and I think most importantly to our very proud Wisconsinite, Chairman Frank, he is a PhD holder from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So welcome, Chief Economist Doms.
I had Wisconsin winning the NCAA. Cool. Someone owes me some money for that. Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here today, and it's always really humbling to talk to people who are actually have their feet on the ground, who are actually making all the changes. I'm an economist. I'm going to talk to you about data. I'm going to try not to be too boring. But being here on the same platform as you folks who are taking the risk, who are, your blood, sweat, and tears, making the changes to make our country better. It's always it's just incredibly humbling, and it's very inspiring as well. I know I'm between you and leaving, so I'll be brief. But I want to take a couple minutes to put all the efforts that we're talking about here today in somewhat of a broader context. We hear about all these great stories, and what does this mean really for the country? And I want to talk about this in two ways. The first, I just want to talk about the green economy and how important that is. And the second, I just want to talk about energy a little bit. So let's just talk about the green economy first. So when we're talking about the green economy, we go back and we look in, say, 2007. The green economy is really big. There's all of you folks, but a lot of folks don't work in the green economy. Just how big is it? When we go back to 2007, we estimated it was about 2 million jobs. Just think about how many 2 million is. That's just a very large number. So that's a big chunk of the US economy. It's a couple percent. And then if we look more recently, the most recent estimates of 2010 from the Department of Labor, it's increased to about 3 million. So there's a lot of green jobs out there. And if based on other studies, this is a sector of the economy that's growing above average, and that's a very, very good thing. Another thing about green jobs is that some people have found is that green jobs tend to be good jobs. So if you look at your typical green job, it pays more, about 13% more than your typical non-green job. So hopefully this is a part of the economy that will continue to grow and continue to provide good employment opportunities for Americans. So that's one way to think about the green economy. Is just, you folks are all members of the green economy, as are many people here in the audience. So there's, a couple million of you. Another way to think about this is just in terms of energy. A lot of your efforts in the green economy affect energy use in one way or another. If you're talking about recycling, then you're reducing energy use and producing goods and services. We're talking about transportation, and think about all the good things that people up here on the stage are doing. So, just how important is energy? And I find this issue just really confusing because you hear all these phrases. You hear phrases like millions of barrels a day. I mean, most of us don't even know what a barrel is, let alone what millions of these things are a day. That's just a very daunting number. You hear about gigawatts and megawatts, kind of whatever those things are. So how does this actually translate to your average American family? So let's just think about this for a second. So how much does your average American family spend on energy? And someone's holding up 4. Does that mean I have 4 minutes, or is that your answer, $4? Oh, okay. It's not $4. But just think about that. So think about all the gasoline that's purchased. Think about your utility bills. And just think about a number, your average American family. The answer is $5,000. That is a lot of money. And so if we can do anything to reduce our energy dependence, and I'm just talking about this from a dollars and cents point of view, that is a tremendous sum of money. About $1,800 of that is spent on utilities. So anything we can do to help, weatherize, to help make our homes more efficient, to make our businesses more efficient, that's really good. Now, that's only kind of like the tip of the iceberg. So how else do we pay for energy? Well, just think about all the goods and services you buy, right? All those goods and services, those require energy too. So indirectly, you spend about another $4,000 per American family on energy. So that's just huge. So anything we can do to become a little more energy efficient, to increase recycling, to look at alternative forms of energy, all this is really important just from a dollars and cents point of view. And I realize dollars and cents isn't the only reason why we're doing this. We're doing this for lots of good environmental reasons as well. But I really think that if we spread the message of just look at this from a pure business case point of view, as we heard some of our speakers talking about, I think we can really start turning the dialogue around, really getting more people talking about this, really embracing it. So that's my second observation. And so with that, since it's really close to happy hour, you guys have been here for a while, again, I just really want to thank you for all the great work that you're doing, and really appreciate everything. And I hope you get to enjoy the weather outside. It's absolutely beautiful today. So, bye-bye.
Thanks again to everybody who's watching at home, at your work, or here in the audience. Thanks for being here, and thanks especially to our champions. Congratulations.